figured out I just need to make money. Everyone has their own needs. I guess it's not good, said another supplier who sells drugs to clients from Canada to Croatia. I didn't know at first until I went online and translated the product into Chinese, said another salesperson.
From Senegal to Nigeria, millions of people in West Africa are looking to emigrate. In an urgent search for better jobs, wages and prospects. Often it's in the hope that they can improve not only their own lives, but send money back to their families as well. But just what does it mean to migrate? To decide to take the plunge and uproot your own life and remake it in another land? What does it do to family relationships? And what is the long-term plan? To stay or to return? Elena Boateng spoke to her mother about what had motivated her decision to move from Ghana to England and what she made of the results.
My mother first came to London in March 1983. She couldn't remember the exact date, but the soul-destroying scenes in Ghana that drove her to this decision were still vivid in her mind. J.J. Rollins' second coup happened in 1981, and his draconian leadership was made worse by a severe countrywide food shortage. Many Ghanaians, including my mother, stood in long queues for rations. Everyone was losing weight and looking so skinny. We had this saying, the Rollins chain, which is how we described our protruding collarbones due to starvation. So I came to London with a Rollins chain, she joked. She told me about the mixed feelings she had, leaving her mother, sisters and brother behind. Her family was still grieving the death of her uncle, Lieutenant General Frederick Akufu. He had become head of state after he had led a palace coup, but was soon tried and executed following J.J. Rollins' first uprising in 1979. My auntie Akufu, my uncle's wife, along with many others, sought political asylum in 1981. Things were not safe for them under Rollins' aggressive regime, my mother recounted. Her new home would be Edgware, North London. In her auntie Akufu's house, she had obtained a student visa to come to London. She took on a cleaning job alongside studying to become a seamstress. I'd call my mum at least once a week through a phone box and would send her £50 each month as remittance money, she told me. Her then boyfriend, my dad, joined her in the UK from Ghana 3 years later. They did a cleaning job together before my dad started driving a minicab. By 1986, they were pregnant with their first son, my brother. My father was studying at the time, so my parents made the decision for my brother to be raised in Ghana by my father's parents from the age of 6 months. When I arrived 4 years later, they also sent me to my grandparents at 6 months old to join my brother in the Accra Metropolitan District. Mum recalls me having no idea who she was when she would call. A part of you knew no one you were staying with in Ghana was your mother, but you couldn't quite grasp it. It was a decision I felt powerless about, taking you both to Ghana. We had to make ends meet, she told me. So I used work as a distraction to numb my tearful longing for my children. I missed you most when you were ill, she said. But then when you came back to the UK when you were 2 and your brother was 6, we clicked instantly. You knew exactly who I was. It was a happy reunion, but the hard work hadn't ended. My parents devised a plan for my dad to work nights and my mum during the day to eliminate the huge expense of childcare. Mum admitted to me that she had never had a timeline in her head to return to Ghana, but that it has always been in the back of her mind. My children are adults now. I think I'll soon be content with what I've achieved in my career, and I really want to spend more time with my mum as she gets good, my mum sighed. So many years of buying phone cards and temporary 2-week trips to Ghana. She expresses feeling nervous about one day returning to her motherland for good, knowing she would have 40 plus years of London living to show results for. But I encouraged her, reminding her of all that she has achieved. Her life might be called a success story. Her home countries, perhaps not so much. My mother has not been shy in expressing her disappointment in Ghana's progress over the last 40 years. We talk about it often. The protests spurred by the economic crisis that took place in Accra, Ghana's capital, in the autumn of 2023 attest to this. Children are still going to school under trees, not on buildings, my mum sighed. Dumsor is still prevalent. Dumsor is the slang used to describe the unreliable electricity supply. It means off-on in the Ghanaian language, true. Before I left, there was less Dumsor, she recalled. I asked my mother what advice she would give to today's Ghanaian youth based on her journey. And she told me, now I'd say, be determined to be a citizen of Ghana. Work hard and work through the challenges, holding on to the major key, which is to treat people how you would want to be treated.
That was Elena Boateng. That's all for this edition of the programme. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Cope. You can hear more stories from around the world, including the trial of Hunter Biden in the US on the From Our Own Correspondent podcast. And we'll be back again next weekend here on the BBC World Service.
This is the BBC World Service, meeting the farmers trying to keep a dying scent alive.
My name is Raju, and I have been farming flowers for the past 13 years.
Raju's family have lived in the northern Indian city of Kannauj. Like generations before him, once the flowers have grown and been plucked, Raju sells them to the local perfume makers, who turn them into different types of essential oil known as attar.
This is my rose nursery. Only 20% out of this will survive.
Rising temperatures and unpredictable seasons are making harvesting harder than ever.
Rain in March is not good. It destroys the leaves of plants and ruins everything.
As Raju knows, the future of attar is dependent on protecting it at its source.
Losing Attar, Thursday at 8:30 and 19 GMT. Or listen now wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Hello, this is BBC Trending with me, Marco Silva. Climate change deniers have found a new champion, a Kenyan farmer.
You're telling us that we should care about climate change. What is climate change anyway?
On social media, he's become known as a flag bearer for fossil fuels in Africa. But is there more to his campaign than meets the eye?
I'm saying what I'm saying, and if somebody decides to pay me for doing that, I don't mind at all.
But first, the news.
BBC News with Neil Nunes. A draft declaration at the Ukraine Peace Summit reaffirms the territorial integrity of the country and states that any threat or use of nuclear weapons against it is inadmissible. The document will be signed on Sunday by representatives of 100 countries gathered in Switzerland. Russia wasn't invited and China isn't participating. Tens of thousands of Israelis have again demonstrated in Tel Aviv against the government on Saturday, calling for the release of hostages kept by Hamas in Gaza. Earlier, Israel's Prime Minister vowed to continue the war against Hamas after 8 Israeli soldiers were killed in a blast in southern Gaza, the deadliest incident for the IDF in months. The Pentagon says the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant will soon visit Washington for talks with his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin. The date of the visit hasn't yet been set. The Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has criticized proposed legislation that increases penalties for women and health workers who carry out an abortion after 22 weeks of pregnancy. The proposal equates abortion to homicide after that period. A gunman has opened fire and wounded people at a water park near the U.S. city of Detroit. Police say children were among the 9 victims of what they called random gunfire involving up to 30 rounds at the park in Rochester Hills. China's Premier Li Qiang is in Australia for a 4-day visit, the first in 7 years by a high-ranking Chinese official. Mr. Li said bilateral relations with Australia were back on track. Police in northern Nigeria's largest city, Kano, have banned the city's traditional annual horse parade over fears that supporters of the two rival claimants to the traditional Kano throne could clash. BBC News.
Here's his tea, and that's how we like tea. 2 leaves, 1, 2, and a bud.
This is 29-year-old Jasper Machogo. He's a farmer and he lives in Kisii, southwest Kenya.
Once you get used to it, you don't have to count 1, 2 bud. It's so easy.
On social media, he posts videos like these ones, offering a window into his day-to-day life.
So this is what people do through the day.
You can see Jasper weeding, cutting corn, picking avocados.
Yeah, that is it. It's a typical day in Kisii.
But make no mistake, Jasper is not your average farmer. His farming videos may get clicks, likes, and retweets, but it's the fringe views he shares online that have supercharged his profile.
We have people cooking with firewood, and you telling us that we should care about climate change. What is climate change anyway?
A hoax, a scam, at least according to Jasper's tweets. He wrongly claims that climate change is not man-made, or real for that matter, but rather a ploy by the West to keep Africa poor.
Our fossil fuel infrastructure, which is being derailed by the anti-humanist, neo-colonial UN, IMF, and World Bank.
Jasper's got more than 25,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter, and he has caught the eye of many in the West who, like him, deny man-made climate change. Canadian author Jordan Peterson tweeted a talk Jasper gave at a cryptocurrency conference. Jasper even pops up in a new British documentary that denies the existence of a climate emergency. But could there be more to his activism than meets the eye?
I really hope that it's just not being used by climate deniers to penetrate the African youth, because that is really, really dangerous.
This is BBC Trending, where we take an in-depth look into the world of social media. I'm Marco Silva, and for this episode I've been investigating how a farmer in a small Kenyan village became an online champion of climate change denial in Africa. To really understand Jasper Machogu's journey, to answer the many questions it raises, I had to speak to the man himself. Now, the first thing you need to know about Jasper is that he was passionate about farming. Almost as passionate as he is about Kisii, where he lives with his family.
It's rural, so you expect to see smoke from people's homes, people going to the river with their plastic buckets to fetch water, looking after their cattle along the roads. I know that every other person in my community knows how to produce their own food. We grow beans, we grow finger millet, we grow bananas, we grow avocados, sweet potato, lots of crops. Because I grew up in a background where every other person is doing farming, I really wanted to be a farmer.
So, in 2013, Jasper went to university to study agricultural engineering. And he says that it was there that he first started thinking about the environment.
I was so surprised to see plastics everywhere, polythene everywhere, and I felt that I should do something about it.
And this, according to Jasper, led him to join two environmentalist groups, Greenpeace and Let's Do It Kenya.
I will participate in cleanup activities, collecting litter around the school and the nearby town. And yeah, that's how I came to learn more about climate change, but that wasn't enough.
The groups Jasper claims to have been part of told me they have no record of him, but he blames this on poor record keeping on their part. He also says that it was after one of their cleanups back in 2021 that his views on global warming would change for good.
After that event, I felt I didn't do enough. So when I went back to my place, I sat down and I wanted to learn about Greenpeace. Like, I wanted to be the change. I was so surprised to learn of a guy called Patrick Moore, and that was just it.
Patrick Moore was a Greenpeace activist in the 1970s, but he'd later leave the group to become a nuclear energy advocate. He denies climate change is man-made and has also been linked to groups known for promoting climate change denial. He did not respond to my requests for comments, but he just says that he questioned everything he believed in.
All I knew about plastic, all I knew about climate change was wrong, apparently. So I started doing my own research. And that's how I came to be a climate skeptic.
Since then, Jasper has used the hashtag #ClimateScam hundreds of times, often in tweets repeating widely debunked falsehoods about climate change.
There is no climate crisis.
Initially, when you reached out, I had not gone through his posts. But just going through that, I was like, oh my god, that's not okay.
That is Dr. Joyce Kimutai, a climate scientist from Kenya. I got in touch with her to find out what she made of Jasper's claims on social media.
Saying that climate is a hoax is just really not true. It's been many years of scientists working, and there's a strong consensus on climate change. Human activities, and especially burning of fossil fuels, has actually increased global surface temperatures.
When fossil fuels burn, they release greenhouse gases, mostly carbon dioxide. They trap heat in the atmosphere and cause the planet to heat up.
We're talking about science. This is not religion. This is not just belief. It's about analyzing the data and seeing changes in the data.
On social media, Jasper Machogu has described those who accept the data and science of climate change as zealots, cultists, or alarmists. Words he also directs at the campaigners he comes across online.
When I saw him replying, I really didn't take it serious.
That's Nicholas Omluk from Uganda. He's one of the climate activists Jasper has confronted on social media.
He should actually not criticize climate activists. Instead, he should learn from them. There are so many people out there who are actually suffering from the
Fossil fuels for Africa is me telling the world that Africa needs its fossil fuels not just for energy, but other things as well.
Things like fertilizer, plastics, or cement, all of which are currently produced using fossil fuels. And Jasper argues, if Africa has got plenty of coal, gas, and oil left to use, why shouldn't it use them? And if the West used fossil fuels to grow, why shouldn't Africa do the same? Here's a clip from a video he posted on X last year ahead of a major climate summit, urging African leaders not to join in.
Stand firm. Don't you better attend the COP28 meeting. We are going to say no to neocolonialism in the name of climate change. We should be all about human flourishing, Africans developing. And that's the message.
Jasper's video was viewed more than 275,000 times. So, does he have a point?
I am one of the negotiators for Kenya, and I understand the issues that are being discussed.
You see, as an expert in climate science, Dr. Joyce Kimutai also attends high-level climate talks to negotiate on behalf of Kenya.
I agree that the West have industrialized the fossil fuels. This is what we've used. They're where they are actually because of fossil fuels. That's a fact.
But
when, as negotiators, we sit and talk, we always iron out all these issues. We talk about some developing countries requiring to exploit some of their resources because they're actually developing. So it's not about West lecturing us about not using fossil fuels industries. No, that is not the debate we have.
As I'm recording this episode, Jasper has just over 25,000 followers on X.
I've seen my African Twitter following grow, which is a good thing.
And he says that's partly down to his Fossil Fuels for Africa campaign.
I think Africans are really embracing the fact that I'm saying fossil fuels for Africa. They like that.
Thing is, I tracked conversations on X involving Jasper's handle, and I found out that the overwhelming majority of users engaging with Jasper online aren't actually in Africa, but rather in the US, UK, and Canada. Many of these users also promote conspiracy theories online, not just about climate change, but also about vaccines, COVID-19, or the war in Ukraine. I asked Jasper just how comfortable he was with that fact.
Nowadays, what I've noticed is people who don't agree with what mainstream media says are referred to as conspiracy theorists. I'd like to think of them as skeptic.
Niche as its views may be, this online community seems keen to fund Jasper's campaign.
Through saying whatever I say, I have seen my follower count going up, and I've got people reaching out to me saying, "Oh, Jasper, how can I help you?"
With the help of donations from his followers, Jasper furnished his new home. But not just that, he says he's also helped dozens of families by building a borehole for water, by handing out gas bottles for cooking, by connecting homes to the electricity grid. And the money to pay for a lot of that appears to have started coming in after donors noticed Jasper was denying man-made climate change on his socials. Let me ask you this very openly. How much money would you say you've made as a result of questioning the mainstream understanding of climate science online?
From donations, I'd say about 3,000 USD from people helping me out. But from people wanting to better my community, I don't have a number for that.
I've seen evidence suggesting that in the last 2 years, Jasper's made more than $9,000 US. Maybe it doesn't sound like that much to you, but if you're a laborer or a cleaner on the minimum wage in some parts of Kenya, at the end of the month you might not take home more than $65 US. Do you know where this money is coming from? Who are the people giving you money?
Some of those people, most of those people are from my Twitter, others maybe from interviews that I've done, but mostly from Twitter.
I looked at fundraising pages set up by Jasper, and there I found donors who work in the oil and gas sector themselves, were paid by fossil fuel companies for consulting work, and a couple were part of think tanks known for promoting climate change denial. Does that worry you that perhaps, by taking their money in this way, they might see you as a tool that they are using, or is it something that doesn't worry you at all?
Nobody has told me to change my views. Nobody has told me to say this and that. I'm not getting paid by like a company particular or somebody. So it's just somebody giving me their money because of what I say or what I do. I'm saying what I'm saying, and if somebody decides to pay me for doing that, I don't mind at all.
Remember what I said about Jasper having a devoted audience in the US, UK and Canada? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, most of the people sending him money are also based there. But what exactly do they see in it? Amy Westervelt is an investigative climate reporter from the US.
The last couple of years, there's been a real explosion in fossil fuel development projects in Africa. And because a lot of countries are passing policies that are limiting fossil fuels, Africa is also seen as a big market.
In my social media feeds, I've seen Western climate deniers making that case, suggesting more fossil fuel exploration is just what Africa needs. But Amy says that for that point to really sink in, it needs to come from within.
The reason that this group is championing particularly voices from Africa right now is that they need to make this case for fossil fuels being a good thing for Africa, and the more they can have that message coming from people who are themselves African, the more effective that message becomes.
Amy doesn't doubt Jasper's views on climate change are genuinely held, even if they are not backed by evidence. But holding those beliefs has certainly propelled Jasper to new heights. Last year, a fossil fuel advocate from the US paid for him to travel to South Africa just so that he could attend an international conference promoting African oil and gas. Before that, a film crew from Britain traveled to Kisii to interview him for a brand new documentary, one supposedly exposing what the filmmakers dubbed the climate scare. And in February, Jasper co-authored an opinion piece published on the Fox News website. All this attention, Amy says, can be addictive.
All of a sudden you're getting recognition and praise from people on the other side of the world who have like best-selling books and podcasts and things like that. And I think that tends to further encourage people to stay on that same path. And, you know, maybe you start making some money out of that as well. Then it's very hard to break out of it.
Or maybe he just believes it. What does the future look like for Justa Machogo? Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years' time?
I see myself as the biggest fossil fuel advocate in Africa.
Justa's social media following may be growing, but he's not yet reaching the millions he aims to reach. So you might wonder, just how much harm can he actually do with a few tweets? I put that question to Dr. Joyce Kimutai, a Kenyan climate scientist.
Because we still have low climate literacy levels in Africa and in Kenya. And if that conspiracy theory spreads to communities and people, they could just really undermine climate action. I also really hope that it's just not being used by climate deniers that just want that kind of denialism to penetrate to the African youth, because that is really, really dangerous.
You've been listening to BBC Trending. I'm Marco Silva. I produced and presented this episode.